Thanks for joining me for this edition of the Author's Corner, brought to you by KNEO 91.7 FM The Word. I'm Roberta Foster, and today I welcome Robert J. Morgan to Author's Corner. He's the author of the book 100 Bible Verses That Made America, and it's published by W Publishing Group, and he'll tell you more about how to find the book at the end of the program. And here's a little bit about Robert. He's a writer and speaker who serves as the teaching pastor at the Donaldson Fellowship in Nashville. He's the author of The Red Sea Rules, The Strength You Need, Reclaiming the Lost Art of Biblical Meditation, and Then Sing My Soul, as well as many other titles. And Robert, thank you so much for being with us here on Author's Corner.
It's my joy. Thank you for letting me be with you.
Okay, so the book is very apropos for this time since America is celebrating its 250th year. I know that most books it takes a while to get them published, and so tell us how this one came to be released at this time.
Well, it's really the fresh release of a book that came out about 6 years ago or so. I was on a meeting with my publisher. I was on my way to meet with her, and I had 2 or 3 book ideas we were going to talk about, and I just didn't feel like they were sufficient. Okay. And so on the way there, I was praying about it, and it's as though the Lord just whispered and said, why don't you tell stories about the way the Bible has impacted the major people and events in Christian history? So by the time I got to the restaurant, I had the idea, 100 Bible Verses That Made America, and we signed off on it immediately, and it was one of the most wonderful projects I've ever researched. I could not believe how frequently the Bible made a big difference in an event or in the life of a particular person who was instrumental in our American story. So that's how it came about.
So apparently all of this content that you're sharing in your book had been written down someplace. So did people have diaries that they shared how the Bible affected them, or how did you find out all this information? Because you've got 100 Bible verses, so that means 100 stories.
There are 100 stories, and we tried to go back to the original sources. For example, I have a story about the POW camp in Andersonville, Georgia, where Northern soldiers were imprisoned by Confederate forces, and they nearly died of lack of water. There was only a small creek that ran through the stockade. And these soldiers from the North that had been imprisoned, these POWs, they prayed earnestly for water, and as they were praying one day, a tremendous thunderstorm came up, and a bolt of lightning struck the ground where no one happened to be standing, and a geyser of water came up, and you can go there to this day and drink from that spring. It's called Providence Spring. It's one of the most dramatic answers to prayer in American history. Well, several of the POWs who later returned home wrote down their remembrance of that, their story about that. So I was able to go back and research some of these incredible stories and histories and biographies and diaries, and it's just an incredible treasure trove of material that has been wiped out of our history books by the secularists since about the 1930s. But the Bible and the Judeo-Christian worldview that comes from the Bible made all of the difference in the founding and in the developing of our national story.
Well, in your book, you say that there would be no America without the Bible. And so we hear of the biblical implications in some of these stories, but why would America not exist without the Bible?
Well, it's the Puritans who came from 1620 to 1635 that really populated New England and gave this country its beginning. There had been the Lost Colony before then. There had been Jamestown, which wasn't a very good story. But the Puritans came starting in 1620. They were being driven out of England for their religious beliefs, for their Christian beliefs. And they populated New England. And then their message spread throughout all of the colonies. But the colonies were very, they were independent. It was like a confederation of 13 different entities until the First Great Awakening. And then this revival that swept over America during the First Great Awakening took this Judeo-Christian worldview from the Puritans, set it on fire in the colonies, brought the colonies together with a sense of unity and purpose and a desire for not just spiritual freedom, but freedom of religion and freedom of worship and political freedom. And that's what led to the signing of the Declaration of Independence. You can trace the impact the Bible had on John Jay and John Adams, and even on people like Thomas Jefferson, who, though he wasn't a Christian or didn't espouse to be a Christian, he had a thorough knowledge of the Bible and loved the teachings of Jesus. And so it was the proliferation of the biblical worldview that created the environment for a land that would be the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Well, you've mentioned Jamestown as a story. We're going to get to that here in just a moment. Let me remind the listeners I'm talking with Robert J. Morgan regarding the book 100 Bible Verses That Made America, published by W Publishing Group. And you're listening to Author's Corner, and I'm Roberta Foster. So you say that one of the earliest references to the scripture being used was during the founding of Jamestown. Tell us more about that, and you made some sort of comment about, and that wasn't good.
Well, Jamestown was established. It was a colony established in 1619. There was very little spirituality there. There was an Anglican priest who came, but he died. It descended into absolute chaos. It's where slavery was introduced.
Okay.
It would have been total chaos, except for the biblical principle that was put into effect by the magistrates: if any man will not work, do not let him eat. And that verse from the Thessalonian epistles basically saved Jamestown from total disaster. But Jamestown still was a secular endeavor. It was the very next year, in 1620, that the Pilgrims came on the Mayflower, and they were sustained during their voyage by Psalm 107. I tell that story in the book, and they came and they established their charter for the propagation of the Christian faith, and that was what really established the Judeo-Christian foundation of morality that went on to serve as the basis for our land of liberty. It didn't come from Jamestown. It came, Jamestown would have totally disintegrated had it not been for that one Bible verse. But it was the Puritan migration in the 1620s and 1630s that populated this land with people who loved the Bible and who preached freedom and liberty. So
the book, 100 Bible Verses That Made America, is kind of like reading a mini history book, because you have it all chronological, don't you?
It is chronological, and every story is only 3 pages. These are stories that every child in America should know. Every family should be passing down the stories of the biblical heritage of our nation. During this 250th anniversary, Roberta, everybody, every other group wants their contributions recognized. And I don't blame them. It's all right. But no one made a bigger contribution to the forming of a land of freedom and liberty than Christians and those holding a biblical worldview and those who had a reverence for the Bible. And I'm tired of the information about our contributions being expunged from all of the records. We need to let our president, our senators, our representatives, our governors, our mayors, our city councilmen, our our public school superintendents, we need to get a copy of this book in all of their hands. We need to reestablish in the popular mind that America was created by people and sustained by people who had a fear of God and a reverence for the Bible.
Amen. One of the things that's going to be taking place in 2026 is another election. So how can your book, as we look back at our country's biblical history, be important for helping people decide their vote later this year?
Our founding fathers believed that our political operations had to be based upon wise moral choices. And they believed that wise moral choices came from people who were God-fearing. And without a fear of God, it's impossible to make wise moral choices. And without a wise moral foundation, it's impossible to have good politics. So, I'm not telling people how to vote. I want to tell them to be aware of the story of our nation. Noah Webster gave us the American version of our English language. He was a man falling apart emotionally until he found the Lord during the Second Great Awakening. And he came to Christ. It had a dramatic influence upon him. He was able to pull himself together, and when he wrote his dictionary, it's full of references to the Bible. And he's the one who established the way that we talk today. I mean, you can go all the way back to our history, and the major beneficial developments, including the abolition of slavery and the campaign for the right of life for preborn humans. All of that, the education of both boys and girls, both rich and poor, all of these things came from people with deep biblical convictions. And we need to know that and be aware of those things. And if we are, then we'll be more informed voters for the elections to come.
Well, Robert, along with writing this book, you teach the Bible each week on a podcast. Tell us more about that and how people can find that.
Yes, my Bible teaching podcast is the Robert J. Morgan Podcast. We have episodes that drop every week. They are about 30 minutes, and I just go through books of the Bible. Right now, I'm going through the book of Romans. I've never enjoyed studying Romans the way that I have. Just this morning, I was working on Romans chapter 8 in my next podcast there. So I'd love for people to follow me at the Robert J. Morgan Podcast and also on social media on all of the different platforms.
Well, today I've been talking with Robert J. Morgan about his book, 100 Bible Verses That Made America. And so, Robert, tell our listeners how they can find out more about this book and, again, how to contact you or be in connection with you.
Yeah, well, actually, the book is available right now in Cracker Barrel restaurants all across America. It's also available wherever people get their books, 100 Bible Verses That Made America. And my website has it, too, and that is robertjmorgan.com.
Okay. One more time, 100 Bible Verses That Made America. I've been talking with Robert J. Morgan, and we certainly do thank W Publishing Group, an imprint of Thomas Nelson, for providing us a copy today. And Robert, it's been a delight chatting with you. Thank you so much for your time.
It's been totally my joy. Thank you, Roberta, for letting me be on.
And to our listeners, if you'd like to hear this interview again or share it with another, you can find it on your favorite podcast platform or through kneo.org. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is Roberta Foster on the Author's Corner. Join me again next time.